Coincidence is a story you've been told since birth, a comforting lie. You were taught that things just happen, that life runs on chance, luck, and probability. But deep inside, you've always known better. You've experienced moments that were too exact, too aligned to be accidental. A number repeating everywhere. A call from someone just as you thought of them. A lyric playing at the precise second you needed it. And yet, you brushed it off, because you were trained to. You were conditioned to believe there's nothing behind the curtain, no deeper design. But there is. And it's been quietly guiding you all along. Those coincidences are not meaningless. They're messages, markers, hints from something beyond the surface, reaching out to you. This isn't about superstition or naive hope. It's about seeing reality as it truly is, aware, alive, and always communicating. The real question is, are you ready to listen? As a child, you didn't need proof. You noticed everything. The shapes in clouds, the timing of events, the strange magic in ordinary moments. You sensed meaning before anyone explained it. But over time, that natural awareness was buried. Bit by bit, the world taught you to ignore the unmeasurable. You were told signs weren't real, that seeing patterns where there shouldn't be any was just a mental glitch, a bias, a flaw. School taught you the world is a system of facts and logic, that if it can't be proven, it doesn't matter. So you stopped trusting the moments that whispered something more. You stopped wondering why certain things felt so perfectly timed. You stopped seeing meaning in the chaos. But the signs never stopped coming. The same numbers, the same names, the same patterns over and over, like a secret code written into the fabric of your life. When you mentioned it, they said, "It's just coincidence," and you believed them. Not because you were convinced, but because belief is often a survival instinct. In a world that punishes what it can't categorize, it's safer to stay quiet than sound crazy. Safer to hide your questions than risk being ridiculed. So, you learn to wear the blindfold. You learn to value logic over feeling, facts over intuition. You silence the part of you that still knew, because the system you grew up in depends on predictability. It wants you focused only on what's tangible, provable, sellable. Wondering too much, drifting into mystery, makes you harder to manage. And that's not convenient. So they taught you to shut it down, to dismiss the deep sense of alignment you sometimes felt, to mock synchronicity, to laugh at the idea of signs. They told you your brain was playing tricks on you. But here's the truth. Your brain isn't deceiving you. It's trying to wake you up. You're not imagining the pattern. You're finally noticing it. Some truths are too sensitive to share openly. That's why platforms like Insight's Academy exist, to dive into what can't be said here. And yes, they're offering the Kabbalion for free right now. Synchronicity was never meant to go mainstream, because once you truly understand it, you stop playing by the old rules. You begin to see when the universe is gently nudging you. You stop feeling like life is chaos. You realize you're part of something vast, intelligent, and intentional. That doesn't mean every coincidence is a divine message, but it does mean you've stopped living blind. You've stepped out of the illusion that life is random and into the realization that every moment might carry meaning if you're willing to look closer. You didn't lose this ability. It was trained out of you. But even deep conditioning can be undone. You're not learning something new. You're remembering something ancient. You weren't meant to drift through life asleep. You were meant to notice the signs and follow them. Carl Jung once said, "Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have the eyes to see." He meant that literally. Jung wasn't just a psychologist. He was a cartographer of the soul, mapping the unseen territory beneath the surface of life. When Jung introduced the idea of synchronicity, he wasn't trying to explain away strange events. He was revealing a fundamental truth, that the inner world and the outer world are mirrors of the same intelligence. He saw it again and again in his patients, meaningful events that defied logic. A woman dreams of a golden scarab, and as she tells him, a beetle of the same species taps at the window. A man wrestling with a huge life decision keeps seeing the same symbol in dreams, songs, signs. These weren't hallucinations. They were messages. Signs of something deeper at play. He called it meaningful coincidence. But it was never about luck. It was about alignment. These moments arise when the unconscious is trying to speak, when the inner world is breaking through into the outer one. Jung believed our minds are built on archetypes, universal themes like the hero, the shadow, the mother. These aren't just symbols and stories. They shape our lives, our dreams, even the people we're drawn to. And when the outside world triggers one of these inner archetypes, it's not just coincidence. It's a summoning, a moment when reality calls back. That's why synchronicity feels so powerful, because it's not random, it's surgical. It shows up precisely when something in us is being activated, stirred, changed. And the more conscious you become, the more visible these moments get. Think back to times when everything aligned. You thought of someone, and they called. You asked a question, and the answer appeared from nowhere. You felt lost, and a symbol, a phrase, or a number helped guide you. These weren't flukes. They were invitations. But we've been taught to ignore them, to think if it can't be explained, it isn't real. Jung refused that idea. He saw consciousness and the world as parts of a single system, not metaphorically, but literally. The mind projects meaning. The world reflects it back. Life isn't a cold machine. It's a conversation. Synchronicity is the language. This isn't magic. It's not fantasy. It's a deep, intuitive truth. One science is only beginning to catch up with. You are not just a passive observer of life. You are part of a pattern, psychological, spiritual, cosmic. Every thought, every dream, every emotion you carry interacts with a deeper field of intelligence, and that field responds. When you align with your truth, the world begins to align with you. That's not ego, that's resonance. This is the original language of meaning, not taught from the outside, but awakened from within. When you begin to see this, your life stops being a series of disconnected events and becomes a coherent story. A story authored by your soul, shaped by archetypes, reflected by the world around you. Jung didn't just define synchronicity, he revealed the structure of connection. Now the only question is, are you ready to read it? The universe doesn't communicate with spoken words. It speaks through patterns, symbols, and timing. And if you're truly paying attention, you'll notice it's speaking all the time. Most people go through life believing they're isolated in their thoughts, thinking the world is indifferent to their struggles and questions. But those who begin to awaken start to see things differently. They begin to observe that when they're at a turning point, a sign appears. When they feel like they're falling apart, a breakthrough unexpectedly shows up. And when they're about to walk away from their true path, something subtle yet undeniable pulls them back. That something is synchronicity. It's the universe's way of speaking in a language beyond words. You don't hear it with your ears or see it with your eyes. You feel it. It's that quiet knowing that something matters deeply, even if you can't logically explain why. It's when a book falls open to the exact passage you needed, or a stranger says something that matches the thought that's been looping in your head. These aren't hallucinations or coincidences. They're moments of spiritual contact, brief yet powerful affirmations that there is more to reality than what we've been taught. Throughout human history and across every spiritual tradition, there has always been a belief in the universe communicating through signs. Ancient Egyptians viewed dreams and omens as sacred messages. In Hinduism, there's the idea of Kala, not just time, but divine timing. Indigenous traditions recognize nature as a conscious guide. Animals, weather, and landscapes are seen as teachers. Even in the Abrahamic faiths, there are stories of angels appearing at pivotal moments, or visions steering people toward their higher calling. The form varies, but the essence is the same. You're not drifting through a lifeless world. You're in constant conversation with a living, responsive one. Synchronicities often become more frequent during periods of awakening, especially when old ways of living begin to fall away and something new is ready to emerge. It's no surprise people notice strange alignments when they're leaving toxic relationships, starting creative projects, or stepping away from unfulfilling lives. These signs don't appear because the universe suddenly started paying attention. They appear because you finally quieted down enough to notice. Still, many people dismiss them, not because they don't believe in meaning, but because they've been taught not to trust themselves. They ignore their intuition and explain away what doesn't fit into logic. But the language of the soul doesn't follow formulas. It speaks in timing, emotion, symbolism, in dreams, song lyrics, déjà vu, and moments that feel too exact to be accidental. And when you stop asking, "Is this real?" and start asking, What is this telling me? That's when the deeper message comes through. Some signs are soft nudges, others shake you awake. A mist plane that prevents a tragedy, an illness that forces rest. A loss that strips away false identities so the real self can emerge. These aren't punishments, they're corrections, course adjustments, the soul's way of bringing you back into alignment when you've wandered too far off path. Not every synchronicity feels good, but even the painful ones carry guidance. They say, something has to shift. Growth is calling. Change is overdue. When you start to view synchronicity as guidance, not superstition, you begin to move through life differently. You ask for insight and listen for the response. You realize that every day, in small and big ways, something beyond you is walking alongside you, leaving breadcrumbs of meaning. You don't need to fully understand it to trust it, and that trust becomes your inner compass, not because it ensures comfort, but because it reconnects you with a deeper intelligence than fear can ever offer. You were never meant to wander this life alone. You were always meant to be in relationship with the unseen, to awaken in the middle of an ordinary moment and realize it was never ordinary at all. Most people believe life is something that happens to them, that it's external, random, and fixed. But this belief is a kind of sleep. The real truth is far more empowering. Your consciousness plays an active role in shaping your reality. The outside world doesn't reflect chance. It reflects you, not the persona you show to others, but the real you underneath the surface. Synchronicities are not random events. They are feedback loops. The universe mirrors your internal state back to you through people, signs, situations, and timing. Your thoughts, your energy, your focus, they don't exist in isolation. They send out signals, and those signals draw experiences toward you that match your inner world. That's why certain people show up when they do, why you keep encountering the same theme until you finally face it, why external breakthroughs seem to line up with internal realizations. The line between coincidence and co-creation begins to blur. You stop seeing yourself as a passive observer and start becoming a conscious participant in your own life. This doesn't mean every fleeting thought instantly reshapes the world, but your sustained attention, your deep emotional energy, and your belief systems act like tuning forks. They influence what you perceive, what you attract, and how you interpret your experience. If you're focused on fear, the world echoes reasons to be afraid. But when you live with presence and curiosity, synchronicities become visible because your awareness is calibrated to receive them. Your perception acts as the lens through which meaning is either revealed or hidden. The more centered you are inside, the more coherent your outer world becomes. This is why profound life changes often bring a surge in synchronicities. As people heal, discover purpose, or shed societal expectations, they begin to notice alignments, clear signs that confirm they're heading in the right direction. This isn't about pattern seeking. It's energetic responsiveness. Your consciousness is an instrument, and when it plays in tune with your true self, Life responds like an orchestra tuning to its lead. Synchronicities cluster around pivotal moments, decisions, transformations, awakenings. They are markers on the soul's map, a map you didn't even know you had until now. And it doesn't guide you to a random destination. It leads you back to your essence. Every synchronicity reflects a shift within you, a belief that's changing, a truth surfacing, a fear loosening its grip. When you honor these moments, you're not just observing life, you're in conversation with it. But here's the thing most people miss. If you ignore these signs long enough, they seem to disappear. Not because they've stopped, but because your awareness has dulled. The more you dismiss or explain them away, the harder they are to notice. Synchronicities require engagement. They are not passive, they're participatory. They want your attention, your reflection, your willingness to evolve. That's their purpose. Not to entertain, but to awaken. Your consciousness isn't a side effect of your life. It's the architect of it. And synchronicity is the language it uses to point out misalignments, to highlight what's ready to change. Once you begin listening, life stops feeling random and starts feeling orchestrated. Moments become precise, not by accident, but by resonance. This is why presence matters so much. When you're scattered or disconnected, the signs pass you by. But when you're grounded and open, the connections start revealing themselves. The person you run into, the phrase you randomly read, the gut feeling you dismissed, they were all part of a greater pattern reaching out to you. Consciousness is not confined to your mind. It flows through all of reality. Consciousness is not confined to your mind. It flows through all of reality. And when your awareness begins to align with that greater rhythm, synchronicity becomes not just a sign, but a path, a reminder that you're not just living in this universe, you're in active relationship with it. Quantum physics. For centuries, science and spirituality occupied separate realms, one concerned with data and proof, the other with belief and mystery. But in recent decades, that barrier has begun to dissolve. And at the center of this shift lies quantum physics, a field that, paradoxically, sounds more like mysticism than classical science. Because when we look deeply into the essence of matter, beyond atoms and into the quantum realm, we uncover something astonishing. Reality isn't solid, fixed, or even localized. It's fluid, interconnected, and profoundly responsive. In other words, what spiritual traditions have quietly taught for millennia, science is now beginning to affirm. One of the most revolutionary principles in quantum physics is non-locality. The discovery that two particles once connected can remain linked no matter how far apart they are. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance. But spooky or not, it's real. Change one particle, and the other instantly reflects that change, even if it's across the universe. No signal, no transmission, no time delay, just instantaneous connection. This challenges everything we believed about space, time, and separation. and it opens up profound possibilities. If particles can interact across galaxies, what about people? What about thoughts? What about consciousness? Viewed through this lens, synchronicity starts to make more sense. When two events, seemingly unrelated, occur together with striking meaning, they may not be coincidences at all. Like entangled particles, moments in our lives may be linked by resonance, not through direct cause and effect, but through an unseen, unifying field that connects all things. This is the meeting place of quantum mechanics and mysticism. Both suggest the world isn't made up of isolated objects, but of relationships, frequencies, and waves of possibility. You aren't just a solid being moving through linear time. You're an energetic presence, part of a wider field of infinite potential. And when your thoughts, emotions, and intentions shift, they don't just alter your mood, they shift your reality. They change what you magnetize and what crosses your path. Synchronicities, then, aren't system errors. They are the system revealing itself. Reality isn't malfunctioning. It's interacting with you, responding, rearranging itself to reflect your internal state in the external world. Quantum theory even challenges our notion of time. It suggests that the past, present, and future may all exist simultaneously as different expressions of a greater whole. This echoes ancient spiritual teachings that describe divine timing not as something linear, but as a specific frequency you need to align with. Have you ever felt like you were exactly where you were meant to be? That the moment had been waiting for you? That's not fantasy. That's physics and spirit aligning. Take the famous double-slit experiment. When a particle is observed, it behaves differently. The mere act of observing alters the outcome. This means we are not passive spectators. We're participants. Our awareness shapes the reality we experience. That's the essence of conscious creation. And that's the heart of synchronicity. When your perception shifts, when your beliefs evolve, when your attention becomes focused, reality starts to mirror that inner clarity. Patterns begin to take form. Unexpected alignments appear. The universe responds, but only if you're awake enough to notice. Synchronicities don't scream for your attention. They whisper. In a noisy world, silence becomes sacred. Stillness becomes a gateway to insight. That's where you begin to notice the hidden magic in what once seemed mundane. Science isn't here to kill wonder. It's starting to affirm it. The quantum field isn't abstract theory. It's the invisible matrix that links stars, atoms, thoughts, dreams, and destinies. And once you understand this, synchronicities stop being anomalies. They become expected, integral, inevitable. Because when physics meets mysticism, one truth echoes through both. You are far more connected than you've ever been told, and life, strange as it may seem, is always listening. Free will. One of the most common misconceptions about synchronicity is that it implies fate, that everything is predetermined, and if life is offering signs, then your path must already be set in stone. But that's not how it works. Synchronicity doesn't override free will. It illuminates it. It's not a rigid script. It's a dialogue. Every synchronicity is not a demand. It's an invitation. A fork in the road where the universe gently asks, will you follow this path or walk another? We often think of time as a straight line, past behind us, future ahead, and the present as a fleeting in-between. But both mystics and physicists suggest time is multidimensional, a dynamic field, not a timeline. Within this field, your soul isn't merely progressing forward, it's interacting with probabilities, timelines, and latent possibilities. Sometimes, a future version of you is tugging on the present, leaving signals to guide you. Sometimes, echoes of a past choice ripple forward to create meaning now. These convergences feel electric, like moments that shimmer with significance, a conversation that shifts your entire perspective, an encounter that feels fated, a coincidence so exact it defies logic. These are not random. They are thresholds, turning points, moments when your soul aligns with the path it's been quietly guiding you toward. And yet, you still choose. You can look away. You can rationalize it, delay it, reject it. The universe won't punish you, but it also won't stop trying. The signs will return. The scenery will shift. The nudges will persist until eventually you pause and ask, what am I being shown? That moment of reflection is the catalyst, because your awareness is the key that unlocks the pattern. Destiny isn't fixed. It's frequency. It's not about a specific outcome. It's about alignment. When you begin living in harmony with your inner truth, you naturally attract people, experiences, and moments that resonate with that vibration. Synchronicities increase, not because an external force is micromanaging your path, but because you've stopped resisting your own. Think of those times when life unfolded effortlessly, when doors opened, guidance appeared, and even your risks felt oddly safe. Those weren't lucky breaks. They were signs that you were in tune with your deeper self, that you were aligned. But make no mistake, ease is not the same as passivity. Synchronicity doesn't absolve you of effort. It asks for engagement. It asks you to leap when the sign appears, to trust, to act, even when logic hesitates. Synchronicity is not about surrendering your power. It's about stepping into it. It makes you a conscious co-creator, not a passive recipient. Because once you recognize that life is communicating with you, not randomly but consistently, you begin to live on purpose. You stop waiting to be rescued. You start participating. This is where free will and destiny converge. Destiny sets the coordinates. Free will chooses the route. And synchronicity is the glowing sign that tells you you're on the right track. When you begin to trust those signs, not as absolute answers, but as guiding lights, you stop wandering and start remembering. Because deep down, beneath all the noise, you already know where you're meant to go. The signs are just helping you find your way back. Checkpoint synchronicity. There are times in life that feel like milestones. Moments where it seems you've arrived at a pivotal place on a journey you didn't even know you were taking. You pause, maybe not outwardly, but inwardly, sensing something shift. There's a subtle clarity, a feeling that something just fits. Sometimes it signals closure, other times a new beginning. But whatever the case, it rarely feels like coincidence. It feels intentional, guided. That's not your imagination. That's your soul speaking through the language of synchronicity. These moments aren't random. They're part of a deeper system of guidance embedded within your life. If you learn to notice them, they'll lead you exactly where you're meant to go. Checkpoint synchronicities often show up when you're in between phases, when an old chapter has ended but the next hasn't begun. Maybe your job no longer fulfills you, your relationship feels strained, or your daily routines seem confining instead of comforting. You try to keep going, but things begin to stall. Nothing seems to flow. Then, right before you push too hard or give up entirely, something happens. A text, a phrase you overhear, an unexpected meeting, or a book that practically leaps into your hands. And suddenly, something clicks. The signal isn't loud, but it's unmistakable. For a moment, you remember yourself. These synchronicities are more than comforting. They're precise. They arrive exactly when you need them, not a second too soon or too late. They follow the rhythm of your soul's evolution, not your ego's timeline. And they often bring you to a choice. Repeat what's known, or step into what's new. The signs won't force you. They simply hold up a mirror, offer a glimpse of a map, whisper a message. The decision is always yours. But if you've been really paying attention, the next step becomes clear. What makes these experiences powerful is how they exist both outside and inside you. The outer world delivers a symbol, a moment, a face, and it resonates within like a truth you've always known. That's how synchronicity works, not through logic, but through deep personal recognition. Many people think these moments are rare, like lightning strikes, but they're not. They're always happening. What changes is your capacity to perceive them. The more self-aware you become, the more you understand the language of synchronicity. You begin to notice the patterns you used to miss. You stop demanding certainty and begin trusting alignment. And then, these moments of clarity don't just show up in crisis. They start showing up every day. A quiet rhythm beneath the noise, gently pointing you home. Think of your life not as a rigid plan, but as a living, shifting design created by your soul, one that adjusts and evolves as you make choices and awaken. Synchronicities are the signposts along the way. They don't give you step-by-step instructions, but they show you where you are. And sometimes, that's enough. A small moment of confirmation, a silent affirmation that says, yes, you're on the path. In a world ruled by reason and doubt, these moments feel like magic. But they're not magic. They're memory. A reminder of your connection to something greater. And the more you honor these signs, the more clearly they arrive. Not because you're being rewarded, but because you're learning to listen. You've entered the conversation. You've stopped resisting. You're walking with life, not against it. And life in return responds, always. Because you were never meant to figure everything out by force. You were meant to navigate through awareness, through resonance, through quiet, sacred moments that may seem small to others, but mean everything to your soul.